of the Republic of Kenya, Excellency Azali Assoumani, President of the Union of the Comoros and current Chairman of the African Union, Excellencies, Head of State, Government and Delegation, Excellency Antonio Guterres, United Nations Secretary General, Excellency Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Union Commission, representatives of international organizations, financial institutions, civil society, youth, women, honorable ministers, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, all protocol observed. First and foremost, I would like to thank President William Ruto, the government and the people of Kenya for the exceptional hospitality accorded to us since our arrival in this hospitable and green capital, Nairobi. The beautiful and natural environment in this country augurs well for the great success of our climate summit. The organization of this climate summit in such friendly conditions in just 6 months, thanks to the decision of the African Union Summit last February, is striking proof of the excellence of your leadership, dear friend William. I sincerely congratulate you. Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, le récent rapport du groupe international d'experts sur les changements climatiques
on climate change, IPCC, confirms our fears. Africa is warming faster than the rest of the world. If this phenomenon is not stopped, climate change will continue to have a serious negative impact on the growth of the African economies. Agricultural productivity has been reduced by 34% since 1961 due to climate change, more than any other region. Hence, it will have an unbearable pressure on the food systems in Africa. African countries thus face disproportionate burdens and risks arising from unpredictable weather patterns, particularly prolonged droughts and devastating floods at all levels. Massive humanitarian crises provoke detrimental impacts on economies, health, education, peace and security, and other related risks. For example, the season 2022-2023, about 18 million people have been affected by drought in the Horn of Africa alone. Recently, tropical cyclone Fred has affected more than 1.2 million of people and caused the death of more than 700 people. It is also estimated that between 2019 and 2023, the economic loss as a result of disasters in Africa is between 20 and 35.5 billion American dollars. This gloomy list is not exhaustive. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, climate change has spared no sector. It is to be recalled that Africa has around 400 million who do not have access to clean drinking water, and about 700 million do not have access to a very good sanitation. And this also indicates, experts indicate that there is a gap, a financing gap of 11 to 20 billion dollars. So we are obviously on the verge of seeing climate degradation. It is not the only factor, and it will be wrong not to integrate this in our global analysis of the negative factors, including governance, which is at the very center. I do not want to yield to pessimism. And in the general, it is, however, fortunate that in the table we have some beacons and favorable indicators. I cannot help reminding that 600 million people do not have access to electricity, and 200 million of them do not have access to clean cooking and are exposed to all respiratory problems and diseases due to smoke. And because of climate change, we have problems in our infrastructure, and we need to develop profitable infrastructure and spend at least $160 billion per year. Indeed, it is encouraging to note that the African governments have devoted about 3.5% of their GDP to the development of infrastructure over the past 20 years. It is too little compared to some emerging countries. China and India, for example, devote 7.7 and 5.2% of their GDP, respectively, in infrastructure. We can thus see in which direction efforts have to be made. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, this summit affords us an excellent opportunity to translate the climate ambitions of Africa into investment opportunities, to consolidate our voices on matters on burning issues of climate change, to prepare for the UN Climate Summit and for COP28 in the United Arab Emirates. At these meetings of global importance, Africa must, among other challenges, highlight the worrying and sometimes tragic situation in the Sahel, in the Horn of Africa, where droughts and floods alternate, in the Congo River Basin, with dangerous deforestation and the disastrous consequences of cyclones in southern Africa and in the island states. It is urgent that Africa come to all these meetings with concrete proposals to be implemented without delay. I strongly reiterate my call to come to the next two meetings with precise proposals, without drowning them in literature and the usual litany on the imperative need for collective justice for Africa, where responsibility is very limited in the pollution of the world, with an inversely proportional share of the volume of global investment in the field of environment. This call for a restoration of justice for Africa would benefit from being supported by a real reform of the global financial architecture, for which a high-level panel is rightly devoted at this summit. Obviously, this reform must resolutely focus on the financial organs and structures, institutions which structure the universe, which operate far from Africa. In this desired reform, a question comes to mind: the weight of the debt and the financing gap of the SDGs. Africa alone represented a need of $1.3 billion per year for sustainable development needs by 2030, while the financing needs for SDGs in the same period were $2.5 billion for financing developing countries. Everyone knows that the public debt stock in sub-Saharan Africa at the end of 2023 was estimated at $1.1 trillion out of 650 billion SDRs mobilized. Africa received only 33 billion, which is only 4.5%. In view of these staggering figures and many others, it is clear that there is no relevant global intervention in favor of Africa without a credible solution for the crippling debt challenge of Africa. To wage a struggle which includes financing adaptation, $100 billion per year, Africa has galvanized its will in its common position through a momentum unifying African voices and it will be a central point of our agenda in G20 as soon as we join it. However, in this struggle, Africa cannot just be satisfied with incantation. Just like for its independence, it is a challenge to rely on its own personal efforts, on its own genius, the quality and its virtues of bold, imaginative, united and interdependent leadership. I wish you full success to our deliberations. I thank you very much. Asante sana.
Excellencies, we are overwhelmed by the support that we have received for the summit, and we want to listen to each and every one of us. So I would like to plead with Your Excellencies that we stick to the agreed 5 minutes so that we can have everybody speaking to this. Next, Excellencies, out of COP27 in Egypt was the establishment of a loss and damage fund and the finalization of the details to implement the Santiago network. It was also the first time food security was recognized in the COP conversations. The Arab Republic of Egypt was a COP27 presidency, and it is my honor now to invite His Excellency Mustafa Madbouli, the Prime Minister of Egypt. Welcome, Your Excellency.
Au nom de Dieu le tout, Clément le tout, miséricordieux, président du Kenya, distingués invités, distingués présidents, mesdames et messieurs, je veux tout d'abord vous transmettre les salutations de son Excellence le président Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, président de la République arabe d'Égypte. Il m'est un grand privilège de participer au nom de l'Égypte à cette réunion de haut niveau et je félicite son Excellence président Ruto et Kenya qui a voulu bien abriter cette réunion qui survient après le succès de la réunion de la COP 27. Mesdames et messieurs, ce sommet d'aujourd'hui survient à un moment critique de notre monde et en particulier le continent africain qui témoigne de la fréquence du changement climatique avec les vagues de sécheresse dans le Sahel et les feux et incendies et les ouragans au sud du continent et l'élévation de la température, l'élévation du niveau de la mer et de l'océan et l'élévation des températures au nord de l'Afrique. Et ceci aggrave les pressions sur nos communautés et nos pays africains. C'est pour cela que l'Égypte, à partir de son engagement pour contribuer aux efforts pour faire face au changement climatique, s'est efforcée pour avoir des résultats au cours de la conférence du Sharm el-Sheikh pour passer à l'application à travers l'accélération, la mise en place des projets et pour répondre aux besoins des pays en développement et renforcer les efforts internationaux pour passer aux économies vertes à basse émissions. L'Égypte, en tant que président de la conférence, que Sharm el-Sheikh soit un point de départ pour répondre aux attentes des pays africains pour faire face aux défis du changement climatique. Dans ce même contexte, notre conférence survient pour confirmer notre notre détermination à passer vers l'économie verte et à recevoir le soutien technique et financier et les investissements, ce qui permettrait de bien d'explorer toutes les richesses de nos continents, non pas uniquement dans l'investissement et le financement des projets de résilience, mais également à présenter certains financements pour faire face aux dégâts et pertes. Et je confirme le rôle qu'entreprend le comité des présidents africains et le comité des conférences, le comité des ministres de l'environnement africain pour faire face au changement climatique et ses répercussions néfastes. Mesdames et messieurs, le fait de s'élargir dans les ressources renouvelables sont au sein du modèle de développement et c'est ce qui a été bien félicité par les pays au cours des CDN et notre continent est riche par des exemples qui ont pris l'Égypte qui est arrivé à réaliser 20% de la production de l'énergie des sources renouvelables, mais nous aspirons à atteindre 40% dans ce cadre. J'aimerais bien confirmer la vision des Émirats arabes unis à travers M. Sultan El Gaber pour passer à l'énergie renouvelable. C'est une vision.
Access to finance is the bottleneck that faces Africa and developing countries to turn its dreams and plans to reality, to contribute in solving the climate issue. And meanwhile, that doesn't touch the path of development or have more burden and of debts. This is a great opportunity to deal with the financing of climate, and the Egyptian vision in this respect it has to do with the following. First, we need to reconsider the available financing instruments and to move to concessional financing and grants to accelerate the transition required. Second, we need to reconsider the capital flow to ensure that Africa should get its fair quota of financing. We need to emphasize that financing climate is an additional and a new kind of financing, and it does not take a piece of the development financing